So, hi everyone. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll talk about descriptors. And most talks, they start with some theory and then some examples and then some questions. But I wanted to do it the other way around. I will start with some questions, and then I will do a few examples, and perhaps I will skip in some theory here and there. So first of all, some questions for you. Who of you created their own descriptors? Show some hands. Right, so that's very few. Good. And next question is, who of you uses descriptors regularly? That's about 10-20% perhaps. I think that's not actually true. I think every one of you has used descriptors, and I hope in the next minutes it will become clear why I say that. Okay, so when I started with Python about 14 years ago, I tried many things, and I tried to figure out how these classes work, and you could do all kind of funny stuff. You could assign a function to an attribute and then just use it, like the one there on the left. And there at the bottom you have person speak. You can just call that one, and then you can overwrite a function with some value, which is quite weird. However, on the right we have the Django model, and it does something a bit different. And there, at the end, also try to overwrite the age attribute, but at the end it would throw an error because, well, it says it's an up there. It says it's an integer field, and with some kind of weird magic, it does not overwrite the functionality. So I just accepted that and went on with programming, learned in Django and all of that, and forgot about it until later on. I wanted to know what the why it works like that. So to understand why it works like that, we need to know a bit about the basics of classes in Python. And here, very simple, you have a basic class, assign some attributes to it, and that's about it. You probably want to do something more with that, so you would like to add some functionality, which add some checks for example, if a color or price has the right format, and if we write, for example, validators, then we would add some getters and setters. That's how we usually do that. And in Python, we use the property for that. So the second one, second method there, property color. And the other one, that's the getter, and the other one is simply the setter, and it does something very simple. It just checks if the color is in a list, and then it's valid, or then it's at least assigned. That's how the getters and setters usually work in Python. So you don't really write, get underscore and then your function name and set underscore. This is a preferred way. Good. But what if you wanted to add a lot more functionality to such a setter? So here I use the example of a color. But if you actually look at what kind of options you all have in what you could do with colors, I just checked. Perhaps I can show it. Yeah. So here in Pythentic, for example, they have all kinds of options for validating a color. it would be a huge function, and if you put this all in your simple property, then yeah, we'd end up with a lot of code. And whenever you want to reuse that code, you run into an issue. So how would you reuse such validation and such properties? And that's where descriptors become important. And so descriptors are reusable properties. Descriptors implement implement the get, set, and delete methods, and I think this is and this is the most important part that you need to remember about descriptors. The rest, I use a template for it. What you see here, it's an example of a descriptor. It implements the get and set method. I skipped the delete method here because I never found a use case for it. And then it's also set name. I'll explain that a bit later. So what happens here at the bottom part, you assign the instance of my descriptor to the value, and then whenever you get, so that's the whenever you set the value, its value is 5, it will use the my descriptor set method from the other class, and it will use the get method from that class when you try to get the value. And so you override the get and set values. So this is a template. What happens at the top? The value is directly written to the dict of the object. So you could use sets attr for that, but using dict is also fine. Yeah, I like to do it in this way, but you could use get and set attr for this and that one. There are a few differences, I think. Something which there are some situations where you could end up with in a endless loop because it tries to get a value again or something. This is the safe way. This always works. All right. So to I think I can zoom in a little bit. Oh no, that's not needed. Okay. So to get back to the first example, what if you want to validate something? You simply add something in your set method. And in this case, it simply checks if it's a integer, valid integer, positive integer, and then it works. And I think I have. Can I show the example here? No, let's not do that. Okay. This would throw an error if you try to add a negative value to that number. So there you have your very simple validator that you could reuse in every class that you where you want to use it. All right, you could make it a little bit more complicated. You could add a few more. You could add a few more things to it. So here's a similar validator, but it has a few parameters. This one over here. In this case, I wanted to add some decimals, or to set the number of decimals. I think I need to scroll down a little bit. Yeah. So at the bottom you see the end result. And also, oh yeah, so here it's a little bit different. I use the get method here, manipulate the get method. So it does not actually have these decimals in. No, I should say differently. Whenever you get that value at that moment, it would create the decimals with a right amount of decimals there. So it's stored in the object in a different format. You could have a lot more numbers. So this is a very simple example as well, and here you have to add the init method to pass the decimals from here. All right, so let's see then. Next example. What's that last one? Yeah, fits on the screen. Good. So here we use it in a little bit different way. So here I use it as a decorator, and this is a simple cache descriptor. Yeah, so the value is stored to the cache. Here we have the cache. If it's in the cache, it will retrieve it from there, and yeah. So that's a simple way to create a cache. And this looks a lot like what is it? The property cache, I think. It functions in exactly the same way, or it has a bit more features, of course. But yeah, it's kind of the same principle. It overrides the get and set methods. Yeah. All right. So here's another one, another use case of a descriptor. It's simple authorization. We have a zoom in, zoom out. Yeah. So read it. Yes. Okay. So here we have a document, and I set some write permissions and read permissions, and if the user, and there's a dummy user with a permission write, if it has these permissions, then it can check the content, and otherwise it would raise an error. Yeah, so this is a very once you have this, you could add this to any class, and then all you have to do is add a line like this. Now, coming up with such a scheme and then something that actually works with all of the bells and whistles that you probably want, which would be quite a bit more work and would be much larger. So then it's really nice to reuse that, and there are probably some descriptors out there that you could simply use for something like this. All right. Oh yeah. I said I wanted to say something about a set name as well. I could do that here. Set name is a function that was added in Python 3.6, I believe. What it simply does is it creates another attribute with the underscore, and so you have a private attribute there. it could be a bit safer to use. You do not need to use the set name in all of your descriptors, but I think it's good practice to do it anyway. So I try to use it as much as possible. It doesn't hurt. And once you have this private, the name of this private attribute, you just use it everywhere in the rest of your code, because you don't actually have to use the public one anywhere. Yeah, so that's the use case for authorization. Okay, another nice use case would be a logger. So here again, very simple. We have a class a person, and we want to check if, for some reason, something called the attribute, and we want to log that somewhere. You simply add some logging to your set and your get method, and of course you define it, or you set the descriptor here, and it simply works. So this is another one where it's, well, to do this right, it would be a bit longer, of course, but this is something that you do once, and hopefully it all works then, and you can reuse it in all of your classes. And if you don't need it anymore, simply remove your descriptor, and it continues to work as ever. Good. Now this one is a little bit more tricky. I will start again here at the bottom. So here I created a observer. So perhaps a bit of background. A observer pattern. What it means is you can register observers, one or more, and all of your observers get notified whenever something changes to your class. The nice thing about this pattern is that you could continue to keep your program running, and you could add other observers, or you could remove the observers without any kind of restarts. However, doing that in Python is a bit tricky. So instead, I created here the observer, and I simply set the descriptor here. Whenever this value changes, then my observer 1 and observer 2 will get notified. It will call a callback function, and my callback function is very simple. It just prints the value. So whenever I set the value, both observer 1 and observer 2, for observer 1 and for observer 2, it will call this callback function, and then unsubscribing 1, and it will no longer notify subscriber 2. So how does this work? Again, we have exactly the same pattern as before in the template. So we have the get set and the set name function, and here on the whenever it changes, it will call the notify observers, and that one is defined somewhere somewhere up here. So all of the registered observers, for all of the registered observers, it will execute our callback function. So that one is a bit more complicated, but again, you write something like this once, and how you use it is you just add this line, and that's it. And of course, it's very easy to add and remove it later on again. Good. That one was a bit more complicated. I think I have a easier one here. A very simple one. It's not a use case of a descriptor. It's a bit. It's perhaps very simple, but it simply creates a alias for an attribute. There might be some use cases where you don't want to rename or delete anything, and you just want to add another alias for your attribute, and this simply creates an alias for your for the attribute you defined already. Yes. Okay. Good. So these were the examples. Again, here is the template. This is the template that you can use anywhere. And once you have this, it looks a bit funny, I know, but once you have this, then you can simply add your stuff in the get and set methods to write your own descriptors. However, should you start writing your own descriptors? Perhaps if you think this is inspiring and you want to use it everywhere, I would say please don't. It creates a bit of overhead. It is a little bit more complicated, but there are some very good situations where you do want to use it, and that is if you want to create really nice and clean APIs that are used frequently. So for example, if you're a library developer, or if you create stuff that is used by many colleagues and should be very simple and easy to use, the API, then it would make sense. But it creates a lot of overhead, and if you don't reuse it, then creating your own descriptors is not advisable. I think what you should take away from this talk is the definition of at least a definition of descriptors, and that is that descriptors are reusable properties. Yeah. Good. And if you want some more information about descriptors, there's a very long article on the Python website. I had to read it a few times to really understand what it was about, but there are a lot of interesting things in there, and the examples that I gave are a bit different than what you see there. So there are many more use cases, and I think there are many other use cases we haven't explored yet. Someone else who wrote a lot about descriptors is Romelio. He wrote Fluent Python, and he did a few talks about descriptors, but I think it was about 10 years ago, so it was a bit outdated. But still very useful. Yeah. Okay. And that was it.